All right, thank you everybody. Appreciate your time this evening, and Don, thank you very much for the invite. It's a pleasure to be back here at Lawrence Tech and to have a chance to speak to you folks a little bit about my journey from my time here at Lawrence and through my career over the last 15 years or so. I like this program a lot. When Don started talking about entrepreneurship and what that means, I'm real happy that Lawrence Tech is kind of an active program to help promote this, because I tell you, being in the workforce now and working with folks at many other institutes and universities, a lot of them come out with a real theory-based education, but not so much focus on the practice. And obviously with Lawrence Tech's motto, I think the instillment of the practice part of it from instructors here like Mr. Roshan, who I have a chance to work with every day, to this program, I think is a very important component of it. So I think you guys should be proud of the program and the work you're doing. So again, Dan McNulty, I serve as the Chief Operating Officer of Atwell LLC. Our headquarters is just across the street here in Southfield, Michigan. I'll touch a little bit on the background of the company in a bit. 92 graduate of Lawrence Tech, so proud Blue Devil. In terms of the agenda, I want to talk a little bit about my background, just to get a feel for who I am and where I came from. Ironically enough, my son, who is in 6th grade, is studying entrepreneurship in his economics class, so I found an interesting definition of it that I wanted to share with you. I think it's simple but appropriate. Talk about my professional journey, kind of what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis now, and how I have to put into practice many of the things that I learned here and have gathered over the years. A little David Letterman top 10 list for you, which is kind of my guiding principle in terms of the things I've learned over the years. The future of entrepreneurship and why I think it's so important, and then a little bit of Q&A. I think we got 45 minutes total, Don, if I believe, so I'll try to keep on pace here. So, born and raised right here in Michigan, went to Bishop Borges High School, which was actually just down the road here on Telegraph in Retford Township. And my father was a civil engineer, worked for Wayne County for 30 years, so I kind of got that in my blood, growing up, some of the construction and engineering activities, and ended up picking, Lawrence Tech. I wanted to stay close to home at that particular time, and also wanted to find a place that had a good background, architecture, engineering, construction management. Actually, when I started here, I think it was actually LIT, if there's anyone here that remembers those days, and I think we got ABET accredited right around that early 90 time frame, and changed over to Lawrence Tech University. So, proud member of Sigma Phi Epsilon fraternity, if there's any of our folks here today, but that was a interesting and exciting time. Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. I am a registered professional engineer in 14 states and just applied for Puerto Rico, so we'll see how that goes. Really been on the private consulting side since I graduated, and I'll explain a little bit about the differences, in my opinion, between entrepreneurship in the private world versus the public world. Married and 15 years in counting, so proud of that. 2 children, my oldest is 11, my youngest is 9, so real good boys. So that gives you a little bit about my history and who I am. Entrepreneurship, it's interesting. Like I said, I was working with my 6th grader and in his economics class, and they talked about what is it, and I thought this definition was very appropriate. One who risks, makes decisions, and organizes productive resources to earn a profit. And I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the words in there. And I guess the first one is one. And what you have to realize is that if you want to be an entrepreneur, entrepreneurship is not a committee activity. It's an activity that you will need to take very seriously in your personal life, and that you will need to take responsibility for pursuing. Great organizations are generally led by great people. And I find that in my daily life, is that the firms I interact with and the places I interact with that I find to be real special usually have somebody at the top of it who define the definition of an entrepreneur. Risk. Entrepreneurship is a risky business. If you want to pursue this, whether it be within a company or on your own, you will fail multiple times through your journey. I have done so very, very often. And we have always gotten back up and taken on the next challenges, whether on a personal basis or a professional basis. So a lot of people say they want to be a leader, a lot of people say they want to be an entrepreneur, but a lot of people are not in the position of being willing to take the risk of what that means. And there is risk involved from an entrepreneur standpoint. Decisions. Entrepreneurs are decision makers. They're not necessarily followers, and they're not the silent types. One of the most important things you'll need to learn and do in your professional career is be willing to make decisions. And you'll make good ones and you'll make bad ones, but please absolutely try to make some. I'll touch a little bit later on one of my pet peeves, but clearly the ability to make an educated decision is important. And that's putting the theory into practice from an educational standpoint and a workplace standpoint. Organizes. Entrepreneurs need to be in a position of organizing resources. And perhaps the greatest resource you will all run into over your career is the resource of people. There is no more resource that has the ability to impact a firm positive or negatively than the people that work there. And from a leadership standpoint and an entrepreneur standpoint, your ability to influence the people around you will help to define your success. Earn. Nothing is given in the business world. Unless your last name is Trump or you've hit the lotto, you're probably going to have to earn a living at some point in your life. And I can tell you the people who are willing to work hard and earn their stripes over the years have made a great influence on me and a great influence in our business world. Again, it is a difficult journey at times, and you need to be willing to earn things. There's no get-rich-quick schemes. And profit. Ultimately, one of the things that I realize as a businessman is profit is important. Not from the standpoint of greed in needing to make money, but profit helps organizations and people invest in themselves and invest in their future. And if you're an entrepreneur in a business environment, one of the main focuses need to be on the ability to help your organization be profitable. So I thought in a relatively entrementy school book, that was a pretty good definition, and certainly some things that I wanted to point out. My professional journey. I interned for a couple years. Don and I were just talking about the internship program here at Lawrence Tech, and I had the ability to intern for a couple years when I was here in college, and actually worked over at the City of Farmington Hills and the City of Wayne from a construction inspection standpoint, which was great because for those of you that are in the civil or architectural background or even in mechanical or electrical, the ability to actually go on site and see something be built to me was a great help from a design standpoint. So spending a couple of summers out in the field was fantastic. I remember my first assignment with the City of Farmington Hills. I think I was 19 or 20 years old, and I was asked to go do inspections on a bunch of sewer manholes throughout the city. And for those of you that have ever had to do anything like that before, you've got to pop the manhole cover and look down in it, take some photos, and take some notes. So I don't know, I had 100 or so to do over the course of the city. So I'm young and I'm excited and I'm trying to make a good impression. And he gives me a lift on Monday morning, and on Friday I come into his office and I put my reports down, and his name was John. I go, John, I'm all set, I'm done. And he looks at me and he's mortified. He says, you're done? I said, yeah, John, I got all 100 inspections done, and here are the pictures and the reports, and I was so proud of myself. And he looked at me, and I still remember this. He said, boy, this is a municipality. So you understand how slow I said that word? That's how we work around here. So I finished up my summer there, and I finished up the next one at the City of Wayne, but I realized relatively quickly that the public sector was probably not going to be my career path. After graduation, I moved on to Hennessy Engineers and worked there right out of school. Had a great work environment with a gentleman by the name of Tim Hennessy, who really was the definition of an entrepreneur. Tim was a risk taker and a motivator and a leader and just a fantastic guy all around. And I got a chance there to do my engineering work from a project engineer perspective and then move into a more responsible role, project manager. And then probably one of my greatest experience was moving into a sales position, which for someone with a technical background isn't necessarily a normal task to get into. But Hennessy wanted to try to get into the private sector work more. They were pretty much municipal engineers for a bunch of cities and townships in the downriver area and wanted to start working more for home builders and developers and things of that nature. So I got to go out and try to sell a traditional firm on the municipal side and try to sell that on the private side. So that was a real interesting experience for me and certainly helped me learn some people interaction skills and some sales skills and frankly learn to get told no a lot, which you're going to do if you're out trying to sell anything on a regular basis. And then I think in about '96 I left Hennessy, was actually called on a reference check for someone that used to work for me when I was at Hennessy. They had gone to work over at Atwell, and the HR person called on a reference check, and she did such a nice job on the reference check, she convinced me to come in for an interview. So I actually came in for an interview and then eventually ended up taking a position there with what was Atwell Hicks at the time. So as Don mentioned, I started as a project manager. Atwell Hicks was a very different company from Hennessy. Atwell Hicks was 95% private sector focus. They worked primarily for home builders, local land developers, retailers, construction companies, architects, providing civil engineering and survey services. So it was a pretty big switch, but I think it was the path that I wanted to go down in terms of getting into a little bit more of a diversified private sector focused firm. So when I started in 1996 over there, Atwell Hicks was an Ann Arbor-based firm, just opened an office over in Shelby Township at the time on the east side, and we were 50 or 60 people at the time. So, and I kind of worked my way up over 13 years there into various positions, and in 2007 we actually grew to 450 people. We had probably 15 or 16 offices throughout the country, as far west as Phoenix and California, and all throughout the Midwest and down in Florida. And that was a very interesting period. I mean, we had years where we actually hired 100 people in one year, so growing at the rate of 40, 50, 60% a year, which creates all kinds of challenges. And at the time, I remember thinking that was a very difficult process to go through. To be adding people on a regular basis, trying to integrate them into the firm, trying to preserve the culture, trying to make sure that we were delivering a quality product to our client, all while maintaining this growth. And maintaining some semblance of an organizational structure that worked, that was kind of evolving on a regular basis. So I moved my way up into a vice president role and then ultimately bought into the firm from a partnership perspective, which was a whole unique process for me. I guess I never really thought from an engineering perspective, while I was going to school, that being an owner in a firm was something I necessarily wanted to do. But when I was at Atwell, that became one of my goals there, was to become a partner. And I'll tell you what, when things are good, like they were in 03, 04, 05, being a partner means you get a bigger bonus than everybody else. So that to me sounded like a pretty good deal. I'll explain the other side of partnership here in a minute. But and then eventually worked my way up to chief operating officer and one of the senior partners in the firm. Now, unfortunately, between 2007 and 2009, we did the opposite of what we did between 04 and 07. We went from 450 people down to 180 people. And I'll tell you what, all the challenges that you think you're out there going through growth, it's a whole lot easier going up than it is going down. There was nothing more difficult in my career than having to sit across the table from cumulatively 200 people over the course of a couple years and tell them to pack up and go home. That is a miserable thing to have to go through. Good people, working hard, good firm, trying to make the right decisions, just ultimately caught an environment. At the time, in '07, probably 60% of our revenue was based on residential home building activity throughout the country. Doing multiple $1 million a year with people like Pulte Homes and Toll Brothers and K. Hovoni, and these are top 50 companies, Fortune 500 companies, and top 1-2 home builders in the country. Doing work on the retail side with Walmart, Target, they're open 300-400 stores a year on a regular basis, and we're doing the engineering and the surveying and the environmental work on those projects. And as anyone who's been paying attention has seen over the last couple of years, all that activity really just stopped. It just came to a screeching halt. So you start making adjustments as you're going through and trying to scale back a little bit, while you're really just kind of chasing your tail and let you know where the bottom is. So that was a real difficult process. And then actually in late 2009, a smaller group of partners, actually 8 of us, we had about 25 partners at Atwell Hicks at the time. A group of about 8 of us bought essentially the remains of the firm, the 180 people and the contracts, because there were a series of partners that frankly just didn't want to do that anymore. It just took a significant toll on them on an individual basis. So 8 of us got together, went to the bank and said, we're young and we think we have the tolerance for trying this again, so we're going to give it a shot. So we put a business plan together and essentially bought out the firm, and just celebrated our 1-year anniversary of the new firm in December of 2010. So it's again been an interesting journey over the last 15 years, seeing the ups and downs of the economy and what that does to individuals and what it does to a firm. But I can tell you, through the up and through the down, having an entrepreneur spirit and the ability to believe in yourself and the people around you was critical. It was easy to get down certain days, but I think the belief in each other as a partnership group and the belief in our staff ultimately helped carry us through this and has really helped us to get off to a pretty good start here as a new company. So what am I doing currently? Well, I'm a senior partner and chief operating officer at Atwell LLC, which is essentially the remains of Atwell Hicks. We started off about 180 people in December of 2009. We're now at 220 people. So we've added about 40 bodies over the course of the last 14 months, and we're able to call back a handful of people from layoff that didn't make it through the transition. We provide turnkey land development and real estate solutions. That's a fancy marketing slogan. What do we really do? We do land planning, primarily for private sector clients who are looking at how to develop a piece of real estate. We'll analyze it for them, help them understand what some of the constraints are, do some conceptual layouts of it. We do civil engineering, kind of my core, and still the core of our business is plan and profile drawings. Eventually something's got to get built, and the way it gets built is off of a set of construction plans, and we do a tremendous amount of construction plan work. Land surveying. I'm sure some of you here in the civil program are probably taking some land surveying courses over the years. We do a tremendous amount of land survey activity. Environmental consulting, which has been a great shot in the arm for us. In fact, it's about 1/3 of our revenue on an annual basis. But we do a lot of work on the what I'll call the dirty dirt side, groundwater contamination, soil contamination from industrial activities, oil spills, things of that nature, as well as the bugs and bunny side. We do wetland investigations, endangered species studies, fatal flaw analysis. I was going to get it right eventually. Avian studies for bird impact on projects, a whole variety of kind of natural resource consulting. And then, ironically enough, some land acquisition services. We do a tremendous amount of work right now for the alternative energy industry, primarily wind farm and solar farm projects. And they're very interesting real estate projects because they're of significant magnitude. Typically, you're talking projects that are in the 5,000 to 20,000 acre magnitude in the middle of nowhere. And you have to do a bunch of due diligence on who owns the real estate because you want to put up either solar panels or wind turbines. And there's a permitting process to go through, but there's also a a local community process to go to. You have to work with the local people to convince them this is a good idea and why, understand the economic impacts of it, the noise impacts of it. So we do a lot of work, what we call kind of pre-land acquisition services, where any given day we'll have 30 or so people out knocking on farm doors, sitting at a conference room table or a dining room table with a homeowner talking about the impacts that this project might have and asking if we can possibly lease some space on their farm to put up a turbine or a solar panel. So again, a very different activity for us, certainly something we didn't do a tremendous amount of work of, but as the economy's changed, we've had to look at where there's activity, and the alternative energy market is a very good market. Again, we serve the commercial real estate market still do a lot of work with some of the major retailers in the country, helping them on site planning and engineering activity. Institutional clients, some K-12 work, higher education work, as well as some industrial work. One of the big projects that I'm involved on right now is down in the Chattanooga, Tennessee area, where we're working on what will ultimately be a $2.5 billion investment by Wacker Chemical Company out of Germany to build a new polysilicon manufacturing plant. It'll be the second such plant in the United States, and it will be primarily because of the growing need for ultra-pure polysilicon for solar panels. So again, although this is a more traditional engineering project for us, where we're doing plan profile drawings, on-site construction activity, it's really being driven by an alternative economic source in terms of the alternative energy industry. Telecommunications, one of the things we've done in the last couple years is diversify into the telecommunications. I'm guessing everybody in here has a BlackBerry cell phone, smartphone on them right now. That has put a tremendous amount of stress on the telecommunications infrastructure in the United States. So there is a continual need for towers, a continual need for modification of equipment on towers, a continuous need for DAS systems, which is a more local distributed system. For example, I don't know if Lawrence Tech has that or not, but establishing a Wi-Fi system for a university or for a series of retailers or a shopping mall is all part of our telecommunications program, and that's been a growing market for us, and I think will continue to be as the data needs continue to grow with the 4G network being rolled out and the new iPhone on the Verizon network, and a whole slew of new product hitting the market in the next couple of years. Solid waste is a newer market for us. Obviously, landfill and landfill activity continues to be a challenge throughout the country as people have to deal with solid waste and the recycling component. And then energy markets. I think I've talked about the alternative energy market a little bit already. Currently have offices throughout North America and Asia. We've got 12 offices in the United States. We're headquartered just across the Lodge Freeway at the GE building, essentially at the Lodge and Lasher. That's where Rob and I make our day job. We've got offices as far west as Phoenix and Scottsdale in Arizona, as far east as New Jersey, and then I just came back from a trip yesterday where I was in our Nashville office and then down in our office in Tampa, Florida. So pretty widespread geographically. We're kind of a unique firm. I was telling Don, size-wise, 200 people is really kind of an odd-sized firm for the industry that we're in. It's really dominated by pretty small firms. I think 90% of the civil engineering firms in the country are 40 people or less. And then you have a leap up to very, very big firms, people like URS and Jacobs and Bechtel and others who are in the thousands and tens of thousands of people. And we're kind of a tweener. There's days where we're writing a proposal and we are literally competing against a one-man survey firm in his garage. And the next day we're submitting a proposal and we're proposing against Jacobs, which is one or two in the country in terms of in our top 500 firms. So it's kind of a unique spot to be in, but I think we're a very versatile firm. We can compete at a local level with small firms, and we can also go up against the big boys on occasion. So we're pretty happy with the dynamic that gives us. And then Asia, we've got an office in China and an office in South Korea. They're primarily environmental services. as U.S. and European manufacturers continue to invest overseas for manufacturing facilities due to cheap labor practices, they are becoming more cognizant of their environmental footprint. So although the local regulations in provinces, China, and places like South Korea may not be as strict as the EPA regulations here, the U.S. and European manufacturers are trying to slowly bring those facilities up to compliance with either the European law or the U.S. EPA law. And China, for example, just adopted their first version of the EPA, essentially Clean Water, Clean Air Act, and clearly some of the U.S.-based firms are a little nervous about where the compliance starts in terms of the firms over there that are going to get hit first with fines and that. So we've actually got a pretty robust consulting practice overseas right now, which has been good. Okay, so that's a little bit about what I do on a day-to-day basis and a little bit about Atwell. So I wanted to give you my top 10 lessons learned here because, and I've actually jotted these down over the years, and my buddy and president, Brian Wenzel, who is a good friend of mine and I work with on a day-to-day basis, have joked that one day we're going to write a book about all of our stories over the years. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of my insight. So my marketing person changed this. It used to say, assume everyone around you is an idiot until proven otherwise. And she told me she thought that was probably a little bit aggressive. So I toned it down a little bit, but I think after I explain why, you'll get my point here. Throughout your career and even in college, some part of your success is going to be influenced by the people you associate yourself with and the people you deal with on a day-to-day basis. And I'm sure you've all had project assignments where you're working with a group and it's clear that you're leading the group and everyone else is maybe kind of hanging out, or you got one or two guys that are waiting for you to do the job for them. Well, I hate to tell you this, it doesn't stop when you graduate. So I always tell people that make somebody prove to you 3 times that they're actually going to do what they say they're going to do on time, on budget, and deliver it to you with your expectations before you kind of really trust that they're going to do that. So that means you got to micromanage a little bit on occasion, and you have to make the assumption that when you give somebody assignment for the first time, and I'm not just talking about in my profession new hires, I'm talking about in my profession, some guys who might be VP levels or C-level guys, you just can't assume, particularly if it's going to impact you in your performance on an individual basis, your ability to deliver something to your client. So don't let others bring you down. Make them prove themselves. Number 9, compromise breeds mediocrity. Greatness is the outcome of confrontation. As an entrepreneur and a leader, you are not going to be in a position to accept the status quo. You're going to have to be willing to push the limits and push things internal to an organization. It's a very dynamic economy out there, and firms that sit still are going to find themselves lost. And the same thing goes for you from a career standpoint. Showing up and collecting a paycheck is probably not a great idea. You need to be willing to put yourself out there, and you need to be willing to challenge some things. But I caution, that doesn't mean be a complainer. That's the opposite side, is where you have a bunch of observations about things that are wrong with your professor, with your classmates, with your job, but you don't have any suggestions about how to improve them. So I tell people all the time, if you're going to come to me with an issue, you had better come to me with a solution for that issue. And then I'll be willing to talk to you about both the issue and some possible solutions. And then confront yourself. When I say confrontation, I don't necessarily mean you versus somebody else, particularly from an entrepreneur standpoint. I'm telling you, the greatest confrontation you're going to go through is with yourself. Can I do this? Do I believe in myself? Am I willing to take the risk? Right? How good am I compared to my peer group? I mean, those are all challenges that you deal with as you're moving through a professional career. And you got to be willing to confront those things. And if you do, you will find yourself moving down the path of greatness. Number 8, leadership is not a position, it is an activity. I hire a lot of people and they always ask me about their business card and what their title is going to be. And I always tell them a story. When I go to a meeting, it's fairly typical to people to hand out business cards at the beginning of the meeting. I tend not to do that. And I tend not to do that on purpose because I'm not necessarily influenced by what it says on your card. I want to see how you're participating in the meeting. Are you leading the discussion? Do you have input that's valuable? I've seen people with vice president on the card that are note takers and people with junior engineer on the card that have led discussions. So leadership is not about a position or a title. It's about what you do on a day-to-day basis. And in my opinion, leadership is defined by 2 fundamental things. You need to make good decisions. Ultimately, leaders need to make good decisions that help influence their firm. And you need to get people to follow those decisions. If you can do both those things, you're going to be very successful. If you can do one of those things, you'll be okay. And if you can't do either, it's going to be a long, long career. And then repeat. Do it consistently. Make good decisions, get people to follow, and continue the cycle. General Colin Powell once said, when placed in a position of leadership, you must lead. Getting there isn't the goal. Once you're there, you actually have to do something about it. And believe me, when you're in a position of leadership, people are looking to you to do something, okay? You might be happy you got the corner office. You might be happy you got the title. You might be happy you got the promotion. A bunch of people are expecting you to do something, and you had better do it. Number 7, people are not widgets. I will tell you there is no more challenging aspect of being in a leadership position in a firm than managing people. And I would strongly encourage you, whether it be through LTU or other places, to take some classes and hone your skills from a people management standpoint, people interaction standpoint. It's an extremely challenging thing. It's one of the things I spend way more of my day on than I'd like to spend on. Probably the best advice I can get or give you is a discussion I had with a project manager, team leader of mine out in our Chicago office. Rob, you know Troy, and Troy's a pretty he's a pretty passionate guy. He gets frustrated when things don't happen. He's a hard worker, does a good job, good engineer, and he struggled for a long time on people skills. And he would come to me and he'd go, I just don't know why I can't get Billy or Bobby or Susie to do things the way I want to do them. And I said, Troy, if your definition of success is that they're going to be a mini version of you, you will be eternally disappointed as a leader. Your job is not to make them a version of you. Your job is to make them a better version of them. Understand what their strengths are, understand what their weaknesses are, and help them improve who they are. Start there. Year over year, are they getting better at being them? Because they're never going to be you. And I think that is a point that's helped Troy and certainly has helped me over the years. This isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. Entrepreneurship is a journey that begins early on here from an educational standpoint and really continues throughout your career. I continue to struggle with things on a daily basis. I continue to learn things on a daily basis. I continue to try to improve myself from a professional standpoint on a daily basis. There's no get-rich-quick ideas out there. You have to be willing to work hard on a day-to-day basis to be successful, whether it be here in the classroom or whether it be out there in the work environment. Hard work over time in the proper environment equals success. And I think all those things are important, including the environment standpoint. I would highly encourage you, if you want to pursue a journey that includes being more of an entrepreneur, to find an environment that supports that. Because not every place does. Back to my manhole report story. You know, there's going to be places where that's just not the culture. That's not what they're looking for. They're not structured that way. So you got to find a work environment that allows you to pursue those things. Issues are not like wine. They do not get better with time. Number 5. This one is one I'm not very good at. I tend to be not a confrontational person. So when issues come up, and 99% of every issue you're going to deal with is a personnel issue, I guarantee you, you have to deal with them. You got to be fair and honest, and you've got to tell people they're not very good at certain things on a regular basis. You owe them that. You have to be fair to them. There's a difference between being honest and being mean. And I think good managers and good people managers are honest with their staff and give them good critical feedback. My president tells me all the time is that every situation is solving itself. So either you're going to bring it to resolution or it's going to come to resolution. So you better manage it so the outcome is what you want it to be. Otherwise, you can't control the outcome. And I've seen that happen many, many times on staff issues where you let something fester and the outcome is the opposite of what you wanted to occur and you were just too busy to deal with it, didn't think it was that important. When issues come up, address them. Number 4, make a plan, share the plan, work the plan. This has been a very good guiding principle for me over the years. When we were going through both our growth and ultimately our consolidation, you have a tendency to start looking everywhere. You know, you're desperate for revenue, you want to keep people busy, you stretch yourself into doing some activity maybe you're not very good at. So it's critically important to develop a plan for yourself from a career perspective. Where do you want to go? Who do you want to be? Right? What environment do you want to work in? What type of companies do you want to be at? And for your firm. You know, you got to define who you are from a professional standpoint. And ethics needs to be part of that plan. I tell you, there's a lot of things out there you can do if you want to make a dollar in the consulting industry if you're willing to sacrifice your ethics. And you just can't be in that position. You know, when you take your exam at the FE level and the PE level, and I think I mentioned I had 14 or 15, I have to take every 2 years, renew those, and the one test I must take every year is an ethics exam for every one of those states, and understanding the code and the laws and when I can seal plans and when I can't, and when you can take commissions and when you can't, and how you can contract for work and how you can't. And it needs to be part of the plan you prepare for yourself and the plan you prepare for your firm. Set goals. Any part of the plan must be goal-based, must be measurable, and share them. Share them with your coworkers in terms of your individual growth, share them with your boss, and from a corporate perspective, share them with the firm. So the firm knows where they want to go. And then base decisions on the plan. One of the best stories I heard about the plan and sharing it came in the 60s when NASA was in the space race with Russia and trying to get a man on the moon. And there was a TV interviewer, and he was walking through some NASA headquarters, and there was a janitor sweeping up the floor, and he stopped and he asked him what his name was and what he's doing here. And he gave him his name, and he said, "What I'm doing here is helping to put a man on the moon." And he turned around and he went back to sweeping the floor. That's the definition of a plan that's known by everybody in that company. Number 3, make a decision, please. Back to my earlier point, nothing kills a company more than the fear of making a decision. I tell people all the time, a bad decision is better than no decision. And I know that sounds crazy, but ultimately a bad decision will set some things in motion. And that motion will eventually self-correct itself. If it's the wrong decision, you'll know it soon. Now, make sure the outcome of it's not too bad, right? You got to manage it. But ultimately, a bad decision will self-correct itself, and you'll change it. No decision will kill you. It'll just kill you day by day by day. So I encourage you as you advance your career and as you get out into the workplace, don't be afraid to make decisions. Find an environment that supports it, that's not overly punitive, and push yourself. You'll be pleasantly surprised most of the time if you take into practice what you've learned. 9 times out of 10, you'll make the right decision. And when you don't, you know it relatively quickly and you'll move on. Number 2, work harder. This is something my father taught me, and it's stuck with me for 40 years, is that, you know, you're not always going to be the top dog walking into a conference room, right? Someone's going to have an MBA and you don't. And someone's going to have a degree from Cal and you don't. And they're going to have a nicer suit on than you, or they're going to look better than you, or have more years of experience. You're not always going to be the smartest person, the best dressed person, the best background. But the one thing you got every single day when you get up and walk into your office or walk into your classroom is you have the ability to be the hardest working person in that room. And I'll tell you, nothing impresses me more than people who are willing to outwork everybody else. I look at that Survivor logo, outwit, outlast, out something, and to me it's outwork, outwork, outwork. If you're willing to do that, you're going to be very, very successful. And the last one, stay grounded. Ultimately, it's just work. You know, you've got to maintain a balanced work-life environment. And I tell you, for me, I'm blessed to have 2 kids and a wife that supports me and a good, healthy family life. And ultimately, when you get home, you got to be home, you know, and you got to apply these principles to your home life almost as much as you apply them to your work life. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. But ultimately, I think when Rob and I were here, you know, SIGEP had the Balanced Man program and the scholarship program, and that really was something that, at that point in time, I took to heart, you know, even in the college years, and I've really tried to stick with me through my career, is make sure you have a healthy balance. The future of entrepreneurship. I think it's critically important. It's why I wanted to come here today. It's why I think this program is so important. We live in a global world, very dynamic and very competitive. You're going to be competing against people sitting in a conference room like this that are in China or in India. You're going to be competing against people, you know, all over the country. With the progress on the technology side, it's a very global, very dynamic world. We're doing work in places I never thought, you know, we'd be doing work in. And what you really need is you need entrepreneurs to help push those organizations, to help continue to make them successful. All organizations, in my opinion, are either growing or dying. There is no stagnation within an organization. You're either moving in a growth direction or you're moving towards a slow death. And in order for growth, you need to have entrepreneurs. So the catalyst of growth, in my opinion. They'll help firms grow in terms of revenue. They'll help firms grow in terms of new services to be offered, help firms grow in terms of new clients that can be reached out to, and they'll help firms grow in terms of taking staff and helping them become better managers, better workers, and entrepreneurs that are under you. I have found the journey to be difficult on occasions, particularly during the years where things did not end up the way we wanted them to, from a company perspective and a partnership perspective. I have also found the rewards to be extraordinary, and not just from a professional or financial side, but to see people that have come into our organization over the last 10 years and how they've evolved and the positions they've taken and, you know, the positions they're in to take care of them and their families and their career has been extremely rewarding to me. And I found this journey of mine to be challenging, but ultimately very, very successful. So that's my story.
Okay. Questions of Dan? We've got some time. Can I ask some questions?
What percentage of your business is now national to international, and what is percentage of your business to public, municipalities, and or private companies? And what trends are you seeing?
We did about $30 million in revenue in 2010. 28 of it was US based, so a couple $1 million on the international side. Of that, about 25% of our work was Michigan-based and 75%, all the other offices. And pretty much, I don't want to say all private sector, I would say 95% of it was private sector focused. Last couple years have been really interesting. Our business does okay when there's transactional activity, when there's real estate changing hands, people need environmental studies and surveys, and maybe they're going to improve the facility once they purchase it. And there's a tremendous amount of activity over the last couple years, not necessarily in a good way, but a lot of bank work, a lot of bankruptcy, a lot of foreclosure activity that helps spur some turnover on the real estate side. We see a continued trend towards more environmental friendly projects and designs really throughout the country and internationally. That's why our environmental work and our natural resources work has really blossomed. From a geographic standpoint, we look at the Sun Belt, Southwest and Southeast. When things ultimately do turn around from an economic standpoint, I think you'll see continued growth out west and in the Southeast, Tennessee down through the Florida region. So we've positioned offices strategically to do that. And then I think, the other thing is we've just become very nimble. We're doing work on any given day in 20 or 30 states throughout the country. I think we completed projects in 40 some states last year, and clearly doing a lot of work in places we don't have offices. So I think just creating a company in today's world that is quick to respond, has a relatively low overhead cost associated with it, and can stretch itself to do some things geographically is going to be real important. I think the days of big firms in one office focusing on one or two clients, I just don't think that model works moving forward. Yes?
You mentioned making the bad decisions better than making no decision at all.
Mm-hmm.
How do you balance the need to get more information to make a decision with respect to the need to make a quick decision?
Well, ultimately, what we try to establish is some protocol for kind of go, no-go, type decisions, so that folks know there needs to be some level of due diligence. Whether we're deciding whether we're going to pursue a project or make a hire, or make a design change on a particular project. So, we do have a series of kind of qualifying things that need to be done, but once the information's there, you've got to do something with it. And I think what happens is a lot of people want it to be perfect, or they want to take the risk out of the decision. So just one more week, one more meeting, one more analysis, one more report. Well, I think much like it is from an educational perspective, generally your gut instinct is where you should go, and it's not really any different in the business world. So once you get the data in front of you, you really got to do something. And then particularly if that's your job. I mean, if you're in a leadership role, you've got to make those decisions. And what we tend to find out is that if it's a bad decision, you'll know pretty quick. I mean, it tends to self-resolve itself, and then your ability to correct it. But sitting around and waiting for weeks or months at a time, I think just kills organizations. Yes?
I know you said you were doing environmental consulting in foreign countries for American companies.
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing any for foreign companies, like Chinese companies in China that are going to be dealing with the new regulations themselves? And do you see that?
Starting to. Actually, Rob and I are right now working on Walmart projects in China, and they have a Chinese subsidiary of Walmart over there, and they're starting to go through the environmental compliance process in China. I think you'll see that the manufacturing base internationally, particularly those firms that maybe have been based there and are foreign based, there just hasn't been a lot of environmental regulations in many of those places for years. So it's been easier for us to approach firms that we have relationships with stateside or have done some work for over in Europe, because they have a tendency to understand the regulations a little bit better and maybe just a little bit more of a corporate culture of dealing with those issues. But I do think in the emerging markets, particularly in India China and others that have big manufacturing bases. I think that environmental compliance issue is going to be an ongoing issue, whether it be water quality, air quality, soil issues, work environments. And we see that as being a growing market for us. Yep.
What are the last 3 books or magazines you've read, and what are the last 3 things you've done in your free time?
Well, I just read Shopping Center Today on my flight back from Tampa last night, which is a trade publication. I just finished up a book. It's a TV show now called Stuff My Dad Says, Shit My Dad Says, which is a really good read, particularly if you have a father who's around 70 years old, so which I do. So that was great. And then probably Sports Illustrated. I'm a big sports fan, so I tend to chew through that when it comes in. So my free time, I've got 9 and 11-year-olds, so there's I think driving to basketball practice and doing geometry homework probably qualify. I have started playing basketball once a week with a bunch of buddies in the neighborhood, and when you're 40 and slow and old, it tends to not be a very encouraging activity, but I figured I need the cardio workout, so I try it anyways.
A couple others, yes.
How do you keep a uniform corporate image when dealing with both large clientele and very small customers? Like you're saying, you deal with large corporations than a small single home builder or developer.
We've got a pretty uniform brand that we use. We really don't try to brand differently. What we tell guys all the time is, because our local offices are pretty nimble, they're usually 20, 30 person type offices, they have the ability to act like some of our competing firms, 20, 30 person firms, but they also have the backbone and structure of a large organization behind them. So they've got the ability to pull in greater resources and those sorts of things. So, we'll usually approach that project pretty simply. A local project manager in an office going to the meeting, I'm going to be your guy, dealing with your project on a day-to-day basis. My staff in the office is going to be working on it. We'll try to bring that down to a local office type activity. And then when we go against some of the larger firms, we tend to kind of present a more corporate image from that perspective. 200 people, global activity. Because, we have clients in some places, and they really don't care that we're doing work in China. They want to know if Bob's going to answer the phone when they call the office, And then we've got others that, frankly, what's your balance sheet? What's your insurance limits? Have you done international work before? Are you pre-qualified with certain agencies? And that's more important to them because of their level for risk tolerance and the type of firms they need. So, but from a branding perspective, I think our brand image, I got some information. I think it's pretty good and consistent. It's really about how you approach an individual situation. And one of the most important things to me is you got to understand that. Now, one of the things we do a lot is we pre-qualify clients. We talk to them about whether we'd be a good fit for them. Because we're not necessarily a cheap firm. We're not necessarily a firm that will work for everybody. We try to pre-qualify our clients and ask them a lot of questions to make sure that we know what they're looking for and that we can deliver exactly what their need is. And if not, sometimes you just got to walk away. I mean, sometimes the right decision, talk about making decisions, is no. We're not going to pursue this client, make this hire, take this job. It just doesn't fit our culture.
Okay, well, I think that Dan McNulty kind of hit the ball out of the park tonight. I think you did a great job, and we certainly appreciate you being here and sharing your entrepreneurial journey. I think this was a great learning experience. We have these
handouts,
these folders that you can pick up on your way out. We encourage you to participate in the upcoming entrepreneurial lecture series with Donald Stevens on March the 17th. We also encourage those of you that have an interest in entrepreneurship or are thinking about an idea or that own your own business to talk with our entrepreneur in residence. Pavan, you can raise your hand. Pavan is here and he is here to listen to your ideas and thoughts, so we do that. And We do have a collegiate entrepreneurs organization, and we'd like very much for you becoming involved in that. If you happen to be an alum and you own your own business, we'd like to hear from you also. So thank you very much for attending. I hope all of you have a great evening and drive safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A little over.
I didn't expect anything.